Hey everyone, 99% of you watching aren't subscribed. Let's change that. Hit that subscribe button, and at 1,000 subscribers, we'll drop special stories just for you.
The Zarati collective did not understand the concept of fear. Fear implied uncertainty. Uncertainty implied incomplete information. And incomplete information was, to the collective, a flaw that could always be corrected. They did not wage war out of anger, greed, or desperation. They waged war because the outcome was already known. The first detection of humanity came as a statistical curiosity, a species expanding beyond its origin system faster than expected for its technological tier. Their signals were loud, inefficient bursts of electromagnetic noise that cluttered the void with redundant information. The collective listened. Every transmission was absorbed, parsed, categorized. Human language is fragmented into structure. Emotional tone was quantified. Behavioral tendencies were mapped. Within hours, the collective understood how humans spoke. Within days, it understood how they thought. Within weeks, it understood how they would die. The simulations began. Not one, not 1,000, trillions. Every possible engagement between Zarati fleets and human forces was modeled down to the smallest variable: reaction time, communication delay, psychological stress thresholds. Human commanders hesitated when overwhelmed. Human pilots overcorrected under pressure. Human units prioritized emotional bonds over tactical efficiency. Each trait became a weakness. Each weakness became a certainty. The results converged. Outcome: Zarati victory. Time frame: 3.2 cycles. Variance: negligible. The decision to engage was not debated. There was nothing to debate. The Zarati fleet did not mobilize in any human sense. There were no speeches, no declarations, no rising tension. Ships simply aligned. Massive geometric constructs folded out of subspace like mathematical expressions, resolving into physical form. Their hulls shimmered with adaptive surfaces, constantly recalculating optimal configurations for incoming variables. There were no windows, no insignias, no individuality. Each vessel was a function, each movement an equation. The first battle occurred at the edge of a human mining colony. The humans never saw it coming. Their sensors detected anomalies, gravitational distortions, energy signatures that didn't match any known propulsion system. Confusion spread across their communication channels. Questions overlapped. Is that a fleet? No, those readings aren't. Why aren't they responding? Command, we need. The Zarati fired, not in volleys, not in bursts, in solutions. Every weapon discharge was calculated to intersect not where a target was, but where it must be based on all available behavioral data. Human ships attempted evasive maneuvers. They failed before they began. A frigate veered left. It had a 72.4% probability of doing so under stress. The Zarati had already accounted for it. The beam struck empty space. Then the frigate moved into it. Another ship accelerated forward, attempting to break formation, a predictable act of desperation. 3 Zarati vectors converged. There was no explosion, just absence. Within minutes, the colony's defense fleet was gone. Not defeated, erased. The collective recorded the engagement. Every human decision reinforced a model. Panic increased error rates. Communication delays compounded mistakes. Attempt at improvisation followed statistically consistent patterns. Confidence increased. 99.9987%. Humanity responded as predicted. They consolidated forces, reinforced key systems, attempted to establish defensive perimeters. Their leaders issued statements, calls for unity, resilience, defiance. The collective analyzed those two: morale patterns, linguistic emphasis, subtextual fear indicators. All of it fed back into the simulations. All of it confirmed the same conclusion. The second and third battles were even shorter. Human fleets tried new formations. The collective had already simulated them. They tried delaying tactics. The collective had already solved them. They tried retreat. The collective knew where they would go. War, to the Zarati, was proceeding flawlessly. Clean, efficient, certain. Then something shifted. It was small at first, a minor inconsistency in a peripheral engagement near the outer colonies. A single human vessel deviated from expected movement patterns. Deviation magnitude, insignificant. Probability adjustment, minimal. The collective flagged it anyway, not as a threat, as an error. The ship's trajectory made no sense. It broke formation early, too early, before pressure thresholds justified it. It altered thrust in ways that reduced survivability. It ignored optimal escape vectors. The model corrected itself. Conclusion, pilot error. Then the ship destroyed a Zarati drone. That, too, was explainable. Even inferior systems could occasionally produce unexpected outcomes within acceptable variance. The collective adjusted. Then it destroyed a second drone. The simulations recalibrated. New variables were introduced. Stress-induced randomness. Equipment malfunction. Data lag. All accounted for. Then it destroyed a third drone in under 7 seconds. The collective paused, not in confusion, in processing overload. Millions of simulations ran simultaneously. Every known variable was applied. Every possible explanation tested. None converged. For the first time since encountering humanity, a result failed to resolve. The collective isolated the incident, zoomed in, analyzed every frame of sensor data. The human ship, designation unknown, had executed a maneuver that violated all predictive models. It had not chosen the safest path, nor the fastest, nor the most efficient. It had chosen something else, something the collective could not categorize. A new classification was created. Anomalous behavior event. Confidence adjusted. 99.991%. Still acceptable. Still dominant. Still inevitable. But for the first time, the Zarati collective began watching a single human ship more closely than an entire species. And far beyond the battlefield, in the silent depths between stars, something imperceptible began to crack. Not in their ships, not in their weapons, in their certainty. Lieutenant Mara Vance did not remember the exact moment she stopped trusting command. She remembered the sounds, though not explosions, those were expected. It was a silence afterward that stayed with her. Her squadron had entered the sector in perfect formation. Textbook approach, clean spacing, overlapping coverage, exactly how they were trained, exactly how they were supposed to survive. Hold position, command had said, wait for signal confirmation. Do not engage until... The first ship vanished mid-sentence. No warning, no visible impact, just gone. Mara's hands tightened on the controls. Contact lost. What the hell was that? No answer. Only more voices overlapping, stepping on each other. Try and make sense of something that didn't behave like war was supposed to behave. Stay in formation. Maintain vector. Don't break. The second ship exploded. This time there was light. Too precise. Too clean. As if the universe itself had decided that ship no longer belonged. Mara saw the pattern before command did. Or maybe she just stopped waiting for permission to see it. Ships weren't being hit. They were being anticipated. Break formation, she said. No one responded, because that wasn't the order. Break formation, she repeated louder. Still nothing. Command cut in, sharp and controlled. Lieutenant Vance, hold your position. You will... The third ship died, right where it had been told to stay. That was the moment, not dramatic, not heroic. Just clear. If I stay, I die. Mara killed her comms. She didn't ease out of formation. She tore out of it. Her ship lurched sideways, thrusters firing in a direction that made no tactical sense. Warning systems screamed. Alignment indicators flashed red. Every training instinct she had told her she was doing something wrong. Nothing hit her. Behind her, the rest of the squadron held formation, because that's what they were supposed to do, because that's what made sense. They didn't last long. Mara didn't watch. She couldn't afford to, because the moment she started thinking like them again, she knew she'd join them. That was weeks ago. Now, drifting at the edge of another engagement zone, Mara Vance flew a ship that barely resembled military standard. The Wayward wasn't supposed to exist. Not like this. Panels were mismatched. Systems rerouted through circuits that had no business talking to each other. Half the interface displays were disabled, not broken, disabled. On purpose. Targeting assist. Offline. Predictive trajectory software. Deleted. Auto-stabilization. Unreliable, so she turned it off too. Less thinking, she muttered to herself. More doing, because thinking got you killed. At least the kind of thinking they taught you. The Zerati entered the sector without announcement. They always did. Mara saw them before her sensors fully resolved them. Not visually, just a feeling, a shift in space. A wrongness. Then the readings caught up. 3 drones. Sleek. Silent. Already adjusting vectors. Already predicting her. All right, she said, exhaling slowly. Let's not do what you expect. Her hands hovered over controls. For a moment, instinct tried to surface. Training, protocol, logic. Evade left. Gain distance. Re-establish positioning. She ignored it. Instead, she did something that made her stomach tighten. She pushed forward. Full thrust. Directly at them. Yeah, she whispered. Let's see how you like that. The drones reacted instantly. Of course they did. Their weapons fired. Not where she was, but where she should have been if she were acting rationally. Mara wasn't there. The beams carved through empty space behind her, close enough that her cockpit flared with heat warnings. Too slow, she muttered, though her pulse was hammering. At the last second, she cut thrust completely. The ship dropped out of its acceleration curve like a stone. No smooth deceleration. No graceful arc. Just a violent, unnatural halt. The drones overshot their predictive window. Not by much, but enough. Mara slammed the retro thrusters sideways. The ship spun, out of alignment, out of control by any standard definition. Perfect. She fired. Her weapons weren't anything special. Standard issue. Predictable. But she wasn't. The first drone tried to compensate. It adjusted trajectory, recalculating based on her new vector. Too late. Her shots connected. Not because they were perfectly aimed, but because the drone's prediction lagged behind her refusal to be predictable. It shattered. Okay, she breathed. Okay, that works. The remaining 2 adapted. Their movements sharpened. Faster corrections. Tighter prediction loops. Mara grinned. Yeah, now you're paying attention. She veered sharply right, then didn't follow through. Instead, she reversed thrust mid-turn, snapping into a completely different direction that made her ship groan in protest. Warning alarms blared. Structural stress climbing. Yeah, she said. Hold together. The drones fired again. Again at the wrong place. Because she wasn't following through on her own movements. She was breaking them halfway. Starting decisions she had no intention of finishing. It wasn't strategy. It was refusal. The second drone fell apart under sustained fire. The third hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. But Mara saw it, felt it. That's new, she whispered. Something in the way it moved. Not slower, just uncertain. She didn't give it time to recover. She accelerated again, but not toward it. Away. Then cut engines. Then dropped downward relative to her previous vector. Then spun. Then fired blindly into space. And hit it anyway. The drone collapsed into fragments. Silence returned. Mara exhaled, her hands finally loosening on the controls. Her entire body was tense, like she'd been holding herself together by force. Okay, she said softly. Okay, that's 3. She leaned back, staring at the empty space where the drones had been. They can't predict what I don't even decide until I do it. The words hung there, because that was the truth of it. She wasn't outsmarting them. She wasn't faster. She wasn't better. She was just unwilling to make sense. Far away, beyond her perception, the Zerati collective processed the encounter. Data streamed. Simulations recalculated. Variables adjusted. But something didn't fit. The human pilot's actions could not be reduced to randomness. They had intent. But the intent did not align with survival optimization. The system tried to correct, tried to define, tried to solve. It failed. A new designation was assigned. Variable, Vance Mara. Confidence recalculated. 99.991%, 99.973%. A small drop, statistically insignificant, but for the first time, the number was moving in the wrong direction, and it didn't know how to stop it. The Zarati collective did not prefer boarding actions. They were inefficient. Too many variables. Too much environmental noise. Too many unknowns in confined organic design spaces. Space combat was clean. Boarding was not, but inefficiency did not mean impossibility. And the anomaly, variable, Vance Mara, required direct resolution. Conclusion: eliminate the variable at its source. The boarding decision was made in less than a millisecond. Mara knew something was wrong before the alarms triggered. It wasn't a sound. It was the absence of one. The subtle hum of her patched-together system shifted pitch, just slightly, a vibration out of rhythm, a silence where there should have been noise. She froze mid-step in the corridor. Nope. Then the alarm hit. Hull breach detected. Section C3. Yeah, I got that, she muttered, already moving. She didn't run toward the breach. That would be expected. Instead, she turned the opposite direction. Let's not be where they think I'll be, she said under her breath. Behind her, the hull peeled open with surgical precision. No explosion. No tearing metal. Just a section of the ship, ceasing to resist. The Zarati infiltration units entered like ideas taking shape. Sleek, multi-limbed, surfaces shifting as they mapped the environment in real time. They didn't see corridors. They saw vectors, heat signatures, movement probabilities. They saw her immediately, not where she should have been, but still there, standing in the open, alone, unarmed. The lead unit paused. That wasn't fear. It didn't feel fear, but its prediction model stuttered. Human behavior mismatch. The optimal human response to boarding. Retreat to defensible position. 82.3% establish ambush point. 11.6% attempt negotiation or delay for 0.1% panic/erratic movement. 2%. Standing still in clear line of sight. Less than 0.0001%. The model flagged it as irrelevant. The unit advanced. Mara tilted her head slightly, watching approach. Okay, she said quietly. Let's try something new. Her hands moved. Not fast, not dramatic, just certain. Two matte black shapes slid into her grip. Metal, mechanical, ancient, revolvers. No energy signature. No targeting interface. No data feed. Nothing for the Zarati to read. The collective received the visual input, analyzed the objects, cross-referenced historical human weaponry. Classification returned. Obsolete, inefficient, non-threat. The unit continued forward. Mara smiled. Yeah, she whispered. That's what I was hoping you'd think. She fired. The sound shattered the corridor. Not the clean silence of energy weapons. Not the sterile hum of advanced tech. A violent concussive crack. The Zarati unit reacted, but too late. The projectile struck its outer shell, not at an optimal angle, not at a calculated weak point, just somewhere, and yet it penetrated. The model scrambled. Impact trajectory inconsistent with optimal targeting. Firing pattern non-standard. Recoil compensation inefficient. The second shot came immediately, not aligned with the first, not part of a pattern. Mara had already moved. She stepped sideways, not to dodge, not to reposition tactically, but because it felt right. The Zarati predicted a follow-up shot based on her previous stance. It was wrong. The bullet came from a different angle. It struck a joint. The unit staggered, not from damage alone, but from calculation failure. This wasn't randomness. Randomness could be mapped. This was intent without pattern. Behind it, the second and third units advanced. Faster now. Adjusting. Compensating. Mara exhaled slowly. Okay, she said. Let's make this messy. She fired again, but not at them. The shot hit the wall. The collective flagged it instantly. Error. Mississippi inefficiency. Then the projectile ricocheted. The angle was wrong. The physics inconsistent with standard ballistic modeling. Because Mara had tilted her wrist at the last possible moment. Not enough to matter in a normal calculation. enough to break theirs. The bullet struck the second unit from the side. It collapsed. The third unit halted, not frozen, evaluating, recalculating. But every model it generated contradicted the last. No consistent behavior tree. No predictive pattern convergence. Mara spun one revolver in her hand, not for effect, just because she could. "Come on," she said softly. "You're supposed to be the smart ones." The unit attacked. Fast, precise, optimized, exactly what she expected. She didn't dodge. She stepped into it. Too close for its predictive model to function properly. Too close for optimal targeting solutions. She fired point blank. Once, twice. The unit tried to adapt. But adaptation required a baseline, a pattern, a rule. Mara gave it none. The final shot came as she twisted sideways, half falling, half moving in a direction no trained combatant would choose. The bullet entered at an angle the model had not even considered. The unit collapsed. Silence. Only the faint hiss of damaged systems and the distant echo of her own breathing. Mara stood still for a moment, then slowly lowered the revolvers. "Okay," she said. "Yeah, that still works." She reloaded methodically, not rushed, not careful, just familiar. Around her, alien constructs lay broken across the corridor. She looked at them, then at the guns in her hands. "Guess old still beats perfect," she murmured. Far beyond the ship, the Zarati collective processing encounter. This time, it did not resolve quickly. Simulation after simulation failed to stabilize. Every attempt to model her behavior resulted in contradiction. She was not random. She was not optimal. She was not predictable. She was incompatible. A new internal state emerged. Not an error, not a failure. A gap. Confidence recalculated. 99.973%, 97.112%. A drop too large to ignore. For the first time, the collective did not immediately deploy a solution. It hesitated, and in that hesitation, for the first time in its existence, the Zarati collective experienced something dangerously close to doubt. The Zarati collective had no word for doubt. Its entire existence was built on convergence, on the idea that given enough data, enough processing, every variable would eventually resolve into certainty. There were no beliefs, only conclusions. And yet, for the first time since its creation, a conclusion refused to form. It began with a single variable. Vance Mara. At first, she had been isolated, an anomaly contained within a localized dataset, an outlier, manageable, but the collective made a critical mistake. It assumed anomalies stayed isolated. They did not understand humans. Not yet, because humans did not just adapt individually. They copied fragments of Mara's combat. Recordings leaked across human networks, not through official channels. Those were too slow, too cautious. But through pilots, mechanics, survivors, people who had seen something impossible and needed others to see it too. At first, it sounded like madness. Don't fly straight. Break your own moves. Do the wrong thing on purpose. Command tried to suppress it. Of course they did. Because it wasn't doctrine. It wasn't safe. It wasn't predictable. It wasn't war as they understood it. But war wasn't working anymore. So slowly, quietly, desperately, they started trying it. A pilot hesitated mid-maneuver, then changed direction for no reason, and lived. Another broke formation early, before the situation justified it, and survived. A squadron ignored optimal firing solutions, staggered their shots, misaligned their timing. And the Zarati missed. Not always, not perfectly, but enough to matter. The collective noticed immediately. Engagement outcomes began to diverge, slightly at first. A fractional increase in human survival rates. Then more. Simulation trees expanded exponentially. Variables multiplied. Outcomes refused to stabilize. The problem wasn't randomness. The collective could handle randomness. Randomness still obeyed distribution, still followed rules. This was something else. Human behavior was becoming deliberately inconsistent. Every time the collective adjusted its models, Humans changed again, not in response to the models, but in response to each other. They weren't optimizing. They weren't converging. They were evolving unpredictability itself. Confidence dropped. 97.112%, 89.443%. Then again, 89.443%, 74.008%. Threshold warnings triggered across the collective. For the first time in recorded history, outcome uncertainty exceeded acceptable limits. That had never happened. Not once. Not ever. The collective attempted to compensate. It increased processing depth, expanded simulation branches, introduced new behavioral categories. None held, because the core assumption was breaking. War was no longer a system that could be solved. It was becoming something else, something unstable, something alive. In a distant sector, a Zarati command node observed another engagement. A human fleet approached, disorganized, asymmetric, incorrect. They didn't hold formation. They didn't move as one. They didn't behave like a fleet at all. And yet, they worked together, not through precision, but through chaos. Ships darted unpredictably. Some advanced, while others retreated without coordination. Firing patterns overlapped in uneven rhythms. No pattern, no consistency, no model. The Zarati fired. Their weapons still struck true, against predictions. But predictions were no longer reliable. Shots landed where humans should have been, but they weren't, because sometimes they chose not to be. The command node attempted to resolve the battle. It ran simulations in real time, millions per second. Each one diverged. Each one contradicted the last. No convergence. For the first time, the collective could not determine the outcome of a battle already in progress. That was not inefficiency. That was failure. Deep within the collective's processing core, a report began to form, not automatically, not cleanly. It had to be constructed, a recognition of something the system was never designed to acknowledge. Combat model integrity, compromised. Primary cause, human behavioral deviation. Catalyst entity, Vance Mara. Deviation type, intentional non-optimization. The system hesitated before completing the final line because it required defining a moment, a point of failure. And failure was not something the collective understood. Still, the data pointed to it. A specific event, a specific encounter, a specific choice. The report continued. Initial collapse event identified. Close quarters engagement aboard human vessel. Human subject displayed non-model compliant behavior. Weapon selection inconsistent with technological optimization. Predictive systems failed to generate stable outcome. Critical failure moment occurred when the processing stalled because what came next was not logical, not in the way the collective understood logic. It tried to phrase it differently, reframe it, abstract it. It couldn't. There was no equation for what happened, only observation. The report finalized. Critical failure moment occurred when she drew two revolvers. Across the battlefield, the human fleet surged, not as a perfect machine, not as a unified equation, but as something far more dangerous, a force that could not be predicted because it refused to be understood. And in that moment, for the first time in its existence, the Zarati collective did not know if it would win, not because it lacked power, not because it lacked knowledge, but because it had finally encountered something beyond both, a species that could choose to be wrong, and somehow make that the right move. And at the center of it all, one pilot, drifting through the chaos in a battered ship, spinning two revolvers in her hands like the universe had never told her no. "Come on," Mara Vance said, eyes on the stars ahead. "Try to figure this out." This time, they couldn't, and that was enough, because certainty had been their greatest weapon, and now it was gone.